Hello and welcome to Into the Woods with Holly Worton. This podcast is all about our journey into the woods of ourselves, getting to know who we are, and where we're going in life so that we can create the life that we want to live. It's about deepening your connection with yourself, taking inspired action, and really trusting yourself and your intuition. It's also about mindset. Our beliefs are such an important part of this journey. And there are so many ways for us to change our mindset so that we can more easily live a life of expansive joy. This podcast is also about going literally into the woods and spending time in nature, and how that can help us on our own personal journey of self-knowledge. Thank you so much for joining us today. Now let's get into this week's episode. Hello and welcome to the Into the Woods podcast, episode 374. This is your host, Holly Worton, and I'm back with another solo episode. Today, I'm going to talk about digital detox. I'm going to talk about what it is, why you might want it, how to know when you really need a digital detox. Why is digital detox important? What do you do on a digital detox? Do digital detoxes actually work? How can you really disconnect digitally? I also talk about the difference between digital detox and digital declutter, and finally, how to create your digital detox or declutter plan. Those words are really hard to say over and over again. So I hope you find this interesting and useful. I was really inspired to do this by not only my recent experience walking the Ridgeway, but also a documentary that I watched last night. So hope you find this useful, and I'm going to launch right into it. So I just got back 2 days ago from walking the Ridgeway, which is an 87-mile national trail in England. And it was the second time I walked the trail, and I did it again for a couple of reasons. Partly because I wanted to update my book on the topic, Alone on the Ridgeway, and partly because I wanted to do it in one less day. So I kind of crammed it into a slightly shorter time than I did the last time. And I wanted to see how it would be walking longer days, if I could do it in a shorter time. And I found that really, really interesting and useful because I realized that I could push myself harder than I thought I could. Last year when I re-walked the South Downs Way, I ended up stretching it out into a slightly longer phase. I did it in 8 days instead of 7, and this time I did it in 7 days instead of 8, and it's a much shorter trail. So I found it really useful to know that I can walk longer days, and it's doable. I just need to take more rests and take more breaks, and I can do it. So I found it useful to push myself a little bit harder and see if I enjoyed it. I did. I didn't feel like I was rushing at any time. There were, I think, 3 days in a row where I walked 17 miles, 18 miles, and 18 and a half miles. In not just trail miles, but all the walking I did in the day, including like walking to where I was staying, walking to dinner, that kind of thing. And that's something that I didn't take into account the first times that I did both the South Downs Way and the Ridgeway. I didn't have Fitbit at the time. I wasn't tracking total miles. I was just looking at, well, I walked from this point to this point on the trail, so that's 10 miles. So I walked 10 miles, when really I walked so much more than that. So there were days that I was walking 14 miles on the trail, but it really ended up being 18 and a half miles because of all the other walking that I was doing. And so that was also a learning experience, just realizing how much more I actually walk. So when you say you're walking 10 miles on the trail, it's not 10 miles, it's more than that. And part of me knew that, but I don't know, I guess I just didn't realize how much that was. But anyway, it's totally doable, and I'm so proud of myself because I think it's the very first trail that I've walked, like long distance trail, and I didn't get blisters. And that was because I was really vigilant about taking my shoes and socks off at every break and swapping my socks every time I did, really just trying to keep my feet and my socks dry. And I talk about this a lot in my books because blisters are really important to me in terms of avoiding blisters. And I really think I've cracked the code to blisters, at least on my feet. So if you want to know more, just ask. But it's basically that, just taking off my shoes and socks at every single break and then swapping between 2 pairs of socks a day. That is the secret. At least it's my secret. So getting into this, I was on the Ridgeway walking my miles. I had no computer with me. I was not checking emails. I had both my iPad and my iPhone with me. I was using my iPad only for typing up my book. So every evening when I got into where I was staying, either before or after dinner, I would type up the chapter for that day based on my experiences. And I would kind of do a walkthrough of everything that I was reflecting on and everything I experienced. And I do that every day at the end of my walk, because if I don't, I'll forget all the little details. I mean, even now, if I tried to write that, having just gotten home 2 days ago, it wouldn't be as rich of a write-up. In the past, it's been good and bad, because the first couple of times that I walked long-distance trails, it was really painful and it was really challenging. And I think a lot of those challenges were reflected in my books. And I have had some complaints from people saying that it was too negative, but really that was the reality of what I was experiencing. So it's kind of raw, but it works for me. So my iPad was only used for typing up the book. I also have the Kindle app on my iPad, and I was planning to read some books in the evenings, but I just didn't have the brain space for it. So, wasn't reading books. My iPhone, I was mostly using just for photographs, which I was taking. I took so many. I took over 1,000 pictures when I was on my walk, both of the trail and both of me. Finally, I got this little bendy tripod for my phone. I used to have one ages ago, but it fit a smaller model phone, so I had to get a new one. And I finally now have pictures of me walking, which I've needed for a long time. And so that was fun also to play with. So anyway, I was uploading these photos to Instagram. They're photos that are going to be used in the book and the new edition, and they're photos that are going to be used just for blog posts and things like that, because I have several blog posts that I'm writing about the Ridgeway. So that's what I was mostly doing. I wasn't checking emails again, so it was a total break from emails, which was really, really good. Messaging, I was really just kind of messaging my husband, and that was it. It wasn't a total digital detox, and that's what I'm going to talk about later here. You don't need to do 100% digital detox. Sometimes just reducing the time that you spend on your phone or your tablet or your computer, getting away from your computer entirely for a week, can be really, really helpful. Yesterday, came back to work, worked a normal day. Today, I also worked a normal day, but I was really, really focused. It wasn't hard to jump back into things. I really felt like my brain had rested, which was really great because I was feeling a bit frazzled in the couple of days and week before I went away. It was like my life suddenly got really, really busy, and I had to cram in all this work before I left, and so I was working kind of overtime, and I was really stressed. And I'm pleased to say that a week away from the computer, 8 days, really, really helped my stress levels, really helped sense of kind of pressure and anxiety, and I feel so much better. So, digital detox, what is it? Digital detox can often refer to a period of time when someone voluntarily refrains from using digital devices like their phone, their computer, their tablet, or it could be used to describe a detox from social media. And again, it doesn't need to be 100% digital detox. It could be a set of new boundaries around your digital use, your use of technology. Could be reducing time spent on these devices. There are so many different ways of doing it. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, I don't think I can do this, that's fine. There are different ways of doing it, and you can find the way that works for you. And I think that anytime we reduce the times that we spend on these devices, I think it can really, really help us. So why might you want a digital detox? It can help to improve productivity because it gives your brain a rest. It can improve focus, again, because your brain is rested. It can improve sleep because, as you know, the blue light from these devices and these screens can really mess up our sleep. It can also improve our fitness because it'll give us more free time to exercise because we're not staring at our phone all the time. For the same reason, it can improve creativity because it gives you more time and space to do the creative things that you like to do or to try new creative things. It can help you to improve your mood. A lot of people experience depression and they feel bad about themselves from using social media, oftentimes because they're comparing themselves to other people. And that can be a really toxic relationship. It can also help you to reconnect with the real world. So on my walk, I was out in the real world. Well, I was connecting with new people on the trail. I had conversations with new people that I hadn't met before. I was going to new places I hadn't seen before. I was giving myself permission to kind of make more detours off the trail to see some of the sites that I hadn't seen the first time. I really, really enjoyed it, and I was reconnecting with the trail that I had walked 4 years ago. It can also help you to reconnect with yourself instead of connecting with others all the time. So on social media, you're constantly connecting with other people. On emails, you're constantly connecting with other people. Sometimes, and that's good, but sometimes it's important to reconnect with ourselves. And I find that when I get outdoors and I walk a long distance trail on my own, one of the greatest things that I get from that is just reconnecting with myself. And as I've talked about so much on this show, reconnecting with myself has changed my life. And that's why I highly recommend that people do it. It helps you to get to know yourself, which means that you'll be making better decisions for your life because you'll know what you want and what you don't want. And I think that's really, really important. I think that's why one of the reasons why digital detox is so, so important is that reconnection with yourself, reconnection with your life, reconnection with real things, physical things, the physical world, rather than with abstract digital things. So digital detox can be really, really important to help you, like I said, improve sleep, improve creativity, improve fitness, improve your mood, improve your focus. And all of these things are really, really important. If you ask the question, do digital detoxes actually work? Yes, I think they do. I don't know if there have been any formal studies on this, but from my experience and from the experience of people that I've talked to who have done this, they will all absolutely say yes, and I say yes as well. I feel like it really helped to reduce stress, helped to reduce anxiety, it helped me to slow down. It can help you change your habits, and it can help you create new ones. So I've done a podcast episode before on how to create new habits. So check that out if you need more information on that. I will link to that in the show notes. But if you feel like you have unhealthy habits with any of your devices or any of your social networks, a digital detox can really help you break those habits and then create new ones that are kind of healthier and more useful for you. It can also break digital addictions. We really get addicted to these things, especially to social networks. And I was just watching a Netflix documentary last night called The Social Dilemma, and I will link to that in the show notes. And it was really, really interesting. It was by a bunch of people from major tech companies, or who used to work for major tech companies, talking about how these social networks and apps and things are created to get us addicted to them, so that we're using them, so that they can make more money off of us from advertising. So digital addiction is a real thing. And I think it's really important to know that these devices and these apps and these services are created with the intention of keeping people using them. And I think one of the most interesting things that I learned at the end of this documentary is that they were talking about what rules and things they have for their own children, because I know that digital addictions are really a big thing with children these days. I don't have kids, so I don't have to deal with this, but a lot of parents do. And they were saying that people in the tech industry are often the people that have the strongest boundaries for their kids because they know just how dangerous these are and how easy it is to get addicted to them. And some of the rules that they shared at the end of the documentary about when their kids were allowed to get a phone, when their kids were allowed to get on social media, it's a lot stricter than most people I know. So I find it interesting that people that are from the inside of the tech industry are so strict about their kids using or not using social media and mobile phones. So I think that's a really interesting watch for you if you have kids. Even if you don't have kids, you have these devices probably. So it's worth watching that documentary to see what goes on behind the scenes. So how to know when you really need a digital detox. So you might be feeling stressed, you might be feeling a lot of anxiety. You might even feel separation anxiety from your phone if you tried to sit away from it for a while or have attempted to not use it during a meal, for example. You might feel that fear of missing out if you're not constantly connected and looking and seeing what's going on. You might sense that it's become an obsession or an addiction. You might sense that you're comparing yourself to others constantly and using that to make yourself feel bad about yourself. Or you might have noticed that you really feel uncomfortable being alone with yourself. I was just talking to someone the other day about my Ridgeway walk, and she said, I could never do that. I could never be alone with myself for that amount of time. And I think a lot of people are probably like that, and I think that's really shocking. If you can't be alone with yourself and be comfortable with it and enjoy your own company, there's something going on there that maybe you want to look at, because I think that's really sad if you can't be alone with yourself and enjoy your own company. And I think that's one of the reasons why I find long distance walking to be so useful and so healing, because, I am alone with myself the entire time. I'm not with other people. I'm alone with me and I'm alone with my thoughts. And there's nothing there to distract me when uncomfortable things come up. So I think it's forced me to kind of work through things and reflect on things that I might not otherwise if I were constantly thinking about things and focused on social media and engaging my mind with these digital things. So what do you do on a digital detox? I think it's more about what you don't do. And like I said at the beginning of this, you do not have to swear off all devices or all social networks. You can pick and choose. You can make your digital detox work for you. Don't expect to go cold turkey. And in fact, that's probably not practical because a lot of us will use social media or digital devices for work. You don't want to maybe quit all devices for a week if you need to get work done. Obviously, that's not practical. So figure out what works for you. And I'm going to talk more about that and things that you can consider later on in this episode. So again, it's more about what you don't do than what you do. However, you will want to think about what you're going to do instead. So how can you connect digitally? First of all, determine what do you want to do? What do you want to achieve with a digital detox? Do you want to break your old habits? Do you want to improve your sleep? Do you want to have more time for fitness and creativity? Do you want to improve your productivity and focus? Your why is important. Knowing why you want to do a digital detox will help you determine what kind of detox you're going to create for yourself. Knowing what you want to achieve will help you know how you're going to achieve this and what you need to do to achieve this. So, for example, if you want to improve sleep, that's probably going to mean getting off devices after sundown or a couple of hours before bed or 4 hours before bed or whatever. But if your sleep is great, and that's not a problem for you, then maybe that's not something that you really want to implement, or maybe it's not a priority for you. If you want to improve your fitness and have more time for exercise and creativity and art, then maybe your digital detox is going to be about reducing the time you spend on your phone. If you want to improve productivity and focus, maybe you do want to have digital-free weekends, for example, where you get off all devices on the weekend and do other things so that when you come back to work on Monday, you will feel fresh and refreshed mentally and emotionally and be ready to get back on these devices and really use them in a more mindful and efficient way for when you do the work that you need to do Monday through Friday. So knowing what you want to do will help you know how you're going to achieve it. So to me, a digital detox has a lot to do with setting new boundaries with your devices and with your apps and with your social networks. So how do you set new boundaries? There are two main types of boundaries that you can set when creating your digital detox. So one is space boundaries. So maybe it's no devices in the bedroom or no phones at meals. No phones or devices in certain spaces in your life. So certain rooms in your life or certain activities in your life, like at the dining table when you're eating. So I, for example, usually keep all of my digital devices in my office. My phone sits on a dock, my iPad, my Kindle, my computer, like they're all in my office. And that doesn't mean I don't take them out of my office. If I'm reading a book on my Kindle, yes, sometimes I will take it downstairs. But basically, those things live in my office. I might bring the phone downstairs if I need to make some notes or if I need to use a specific app, or like for this morning, I went for a run and I obviously had to take it with me on my run for music. So that kind of thing, I will take them out of my office, but they always come back. So it's like all of my digital devices, they live in my office and they're allowed to come out of my office, but they always go back home there. I don't have them just sitting around the house. So that's kind of one of the things that I do in terms of space boundaries. I rarely take any of them into the bedroom. If I'm not feeling well for some reason, I might do some work from my bed if I need to absolutely get such stuff done. But otherwise, the computer doesn't come in my bedroom. I rarely read in bed, and I rarely take my phone to bed or into the bedroom. Really, this stuff lives in my office and it only kind of comes out of my office for specific purposes. So that's one example. So that's space boundaries. So time boundaries is another type of boundary that you can set. So for example, no devices before work, or no devices after sundown, or on weekends, or no social media for X amount of time. So it could be no social media for a day or a week or a month, or no social media in the evenings. It's about determining what times you are going to use these devices and these apps, and what times are you not going to use these devices and these apps. You could do a total digital fast and just not use any devices for a day, a week, a weekend, a month, whatever. I think that's worth experimenting with as well. You could try reading print instead of ebooks or tablets. And I really love reading print, but I just have such a small house, and my bookshelf is full, and I have stacks of books all over the place, and I have boxes of books under the stairs, and it's really hard to fit physical books into my life, into my house. Clearly, I need a new house to fit all of our books. But this is where we are. So I try to read the vast majority of my books as ebooks, but sometimes I just don't feel like reading. Like I don't feel like being on a screen. And so sometimes it really helps for me to have print books as a backup so that I can read, because it gives me that break from being on a screen and still lets me read. So I don't know, find what works for you. I think it's also important to differentiate the difference between a digital detox and a digital declutter. And I think both are super useful. And perhaps you might want to do the declutter before you go into a detox. Totally up to you. I think these are things that are really useful to do over and over again on a regular basis. And perhaps slot them into your calendar on a regular basis, like as a recurring activity. So one thing you might want to do is remove notifications. I do not have notifications for just about anything on my phone or my iPad. I do not like notifications. They stress me out. They cause a lot of anxiety. Most things do not have notifications. And in addition to that, I enable do not disturb mode almost all the time. So if you call me, I'm not going to hear it because my phone's going to be on its dock as I'm working, and I'm not going to see or hear the call come in. I will probably see the voicemail later at some point in the afternoon, either when I'm taking a break or when I'm done for the day, and then I will listen to it and return any calls. But my phone is almost always in do not disturb mode, unless I'm expecting a call that I absolutely need to get. So if I have an appointment with someone to have a call at a certain time, then I disable the do not disturb. Other than that, it's pretty much always on. So that's another way that you can remove these annoying interruptions and notifications. Next, you can declutter newsletters that you don't read. Like if you ever find yourself going through your inbox and being like, oh, this thing again, and delete. Like instead of deleting it, just take a second. That'll take a few seconds. It'll take a few more seconds than it will to delete it. But in the long run, it's an investment to unsubscribe before you delete it. When I came back from my Ridgeway walk, I had a bunch of newsletters that I thought, you know what? I don't want to be reading this stuff. Like I never read it. I just delete it. And so I just unsubscribe. I unsubscribed from a lot of things when I came back from the Ridgeway yesterday. Social media. I went through a huge social media declutter earlier this year. Decluttered a lot of business stuff that I was following and started following more author stuff and more nature stuff because that was the experience I wanted to have on social media. You can unfollow people on Facebook without unfriending them. You can mute people on Twitter without blocking them. And I actually just muted someone today that I'm very, very pleased to have muted, so I won't be seeing them in my timeline. But I didn't want to block them because I didn't want them to see that I'd blocked them. So there are all kinds of things you can do to get people out of your timelines without them knowing. Because of course, if you unfriend someone, they will notice. So declutter your social media. Unfollow, mute, block people that you don't want to hear from, that you don't want to see. Unfollow stuff that's no longer part of what you want to be experiencing. Like all the business stuff, like I know business stuff, I'm sick of following that. Like I really want to focus on the author stuff and the nature stuff. So that's why I did that earlier this year. Apps, I regularly go through apps on my phone and I declutter them. So there are a couple of ways that I do that. So I try to keep all of the apps on my phone to, and this is probably going to be a lot, to 1, 2, 3 pages. I actually have 5 apps that I've recently downloaded onto a 4th page, like not page, but like screen. Like, you know, when you scroll through your phone, it has different pages of apps. And then I have this one kind of, what's it called? Like a folder of apps on my phone where I've got like extras. And that's where I dump all the apps that I haven't been using, but I'm not sure I want to delete them. And then I go into that folder every once in a while and I delete the stuff that I really haven't been using, which is great. So that's kind of how I keep my apps to a minimum. So I know that if I'm downloading new apps, I really want to keep them to those 3 screens of apps and not add new things. Like I said, I've now got 3 new things or 5 new things on that 4th screen. So I'm going to need to, it's time to declutter. That's how I know. So that's that. Computer files. It really stresses me out to have stuff on my desktop screen. So I'm constantly cleaning that up. I have a half hour in my calendar every Monday to organize my photos that I've uploaded, to organize my downloads, to organize my desktop, and to organize physical stuff on my desk. But most of that is a digital detox and reorganization, and I find that really useful. So that's the difference between a digital detox and a digital declutter, and I think both are really useful. And sometimes having a digital declutter will help you go into a detox. So maybe this is something you want to do on a monthly basis, like block out some time in your calendar to every week or every month to declutter your digital stuff and then go into a detox. And again, how to create your digital detox or declutter plan. You need to make it right for you. So in that documentary that I was mentioning, The Social Dilemma, they have this kind of fictional story of this family with this kid that like the mom challenges him to go for a week without social media and he can't do it. And she tried to take all the kids' phones for dinner and then that went horribly wrong. Like this family had really toxic relationships with social media and digital stuff. So anyway, you have to do something that works for you. So like, it's like with fasting, like don't jump from you've never fasted before into a week-long fast. Start with something easier. Same with your detox. Like, don't go straight into something crazy. It was like, several years ago, I watched this documentary on juice fasting, which of course isn't really fasting, but anyway, juicing. So I got so excited by juicing. I'd never juiced before, but I really wanted to juice. It sounded amazing. And so I got this book by this guy, the same guy who did the documentary, and he was like, start easy, start with 3 days. Don't go into something long, like work your way up. And of course, I was so jazzed by the documentary. I was like, hell no, I'm doing a 3-week juicing thing. It was awful. I hated vegetables by the end of it. I should have followed the instructions and started with 3 days and worked my way up to 3 weeks, or not. I don't know. It was awful. So anyway, start small and work your way up. You don't have to go into a week of full digital detox. Like I said, I got massive benefits from going out on this walk and just having no computer, one specific use for the tablet, the iPad, and limited use for the phone. Like it was super, super useful to me. So first of all, know why are you going to detox? What do you want to get out of it? Next, when are you going to detox? Is it going to be certain hours, certain times of the day, certain spaces? Like what are the time boundaries and what are the space boundaries that are going to be a part of your digital detox? So that's the how. What is the plan? How are you going to detox? What are your boundaries going to be? And then what are you going to do instead? So what are you going to do instead of these digital activities? You need to replace them with something else, something exciting, something juicy. Otherwise, you're just going to be sitting there staring at the wall instead of staring at your phone. So how do you want to spend your time instead? Do you want to go for a walk? Do you want to go for a run? Do you want to do some other kind of exercise? Do you want to do something creative like art or writing or spending more time with your kids? I don't know. What do you want to do instead of your digital activities? And this is super, super important because if you don't plan that into your digital detox or decluttering plan, you're probably setting yourself up for failure because you don't know what you're going to do instead. And a lot of new phones, I know at least with iPhones, can tell you how much screen time you're spending each week. And I think that's really useful. And it tells you a comparison of how much screen time you're spending compared to the previous week. And that, when they first started doing that, that was a huge kind of eye-opener for me because I didn't realize I was spending that much time on the phone. I was spending more than I thought. So that's something that can really, really help you to see how much time you're actually spending and how much time you can reduce. It's like with my Ridgeway walk. I was actually walking 18.5 miles a day, not the 14 miles that I thought I was. So bringing it back to outdoors adventures. So how is it that outdoors adventures can help us? How can travel help with digital detox? Well, I think it can help because it gives us that thing to do instead of the digital stuff. Like when you find your thing that you love in terms of travel or outdoors adventures, that is such a juicy, joyful, happy thing to do instead of staring at your phone or your tablet or whatever. So I think that engaging these activities can really help you to go into that digital detox in a joyful way. So I really encourage you to find your thing in the outdoors and use that as the alternate activity that you're going to do when you have your digital detox. So I would love to hear from you. Are you addicted to social media? Are you addicted to your phone? What's your relationship with digital stuff and technology like? Drop me a line and let me know. You can email me at holly@hollyworton.com or find me online and get in touch there. I would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a quick review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. And also, I can't believe I didn't mention this at the beginning. I was recently a guest on Joanna Penn's Books and Travel podcast. We talked about solo long-distance walking in England, and I just really enjoyed this conversation. It's one of the greatest interviews that I've done in a long time. It was just such a great conversation talking about something that I really love. So I will link to that in the show notes as well, but it's basically at booksandtravel.page. And it went live on September 17th, so a couple of days ago as I'm recording this. So that is all for now. Remember to visit hollyworton.com/374 for the show notes on this episode. Thank you so much for listening. Thanks so much for listening to Into the Woods with Holly Worton. You can find more information about today's episode, including links for topics that were discussed, at hollyworton.com. That's HOLLYWORTON.com. If you'd like to connect with other listeners and get support on your journey, I would love for you to join my private community on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Holly Worton. That's patreon.com/Holly Worton. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to seeing you next week.